Hey everybody, this is David here with a recap of Engála, our very first conlang on LangTime Studio. So Engála was a language that was created for a species of anthropomorphic rabbits. There's one drawn by Jesse, tending to his cabbages. Oh, and she has a little baby too. Anyway, so yeah, they're one of the five kind of like animal groups in the board game that I am making. They were the first one that we created a language for. For the game aspect of it, you can see these are the 10 classes or the 10 characters that start in the Rabbit Kingdom. They're kind of, I don't know. They're kind of like, they do some damage, they do some healing, and they do some magic. They kind of do it all. And they're a very foresty group of rabbits. So anyway, that was the first group that we made a language for in LangTime Studio. The first season ran from February 27th to September 24th, and we did 31 episodes to get from ground zero to where we felt comfortable saying, all right, we'll just work on Engála in bits and pieces from here on out. Anyway, so to give you an overview of the language, Engála is mostly head initial. Actually, I think it's super head initial. I don't think it has any head final features now that I think about it. It might be with determiners. Anyway, a largely head initial language. It's ergative absolutive. It's VOS, but of course you have to take VOS with a grain of salt because it's ergative absolutive. Instead, what that means is that the ergative argument tends to come at the end. The absolutive argument comes directly after the verb, which most of the time, looking at it from a nominative accusative perspective, that would translate to VOS word order, but it's better understood as VPA, I guess, verb, patient, agent. Anyway, adjectives come after nouns. Adjectives are actually stative verbs, so they're actually little mini relative clauses. There are no true adjectives in Engála. Instead, there are a ton of stative verbs, so that there isn't an adjective that means blue. Instead, there is a verb that means to be blue. And if you want to say the blue something, then you just have this mini relative clause that comes after the noun. Possessors come after the noun. The language is prepositional, and relative clauses come after the noun. This is what the Proto Phonology looked like. In particular, something that we did from the outset was we had this series of prenasalized stops and then a prenasalized fricative. This prenasalized fricative caused us endless amounts of problems because, like everywhere in the sound changes, in the sound system, and then in the writing system that we eventually developed. Because, of course, the language could also have two codas, N and S were the two allowable codas, and that was both at the end of a word and at the end of a syllable, which meant that you could have, for example, A-N-Z-A, where N was a coda and Z was the onset. You could also have A prenasalized Z, A. You could also have A-N prenasalized N, Z, A. You'd have all of that. What a disaster. What a nightmare. Ugh, what a mistake. Won't do it again, but we were stuck with it in this one. Anyway, so this was the proto stage, and then in the modern stage, we ditched all of the prenasalized segments. They got realized as many other things. There were also a series of sound changes that produced, for example, intervocalic voicing. We have a whole palatal series now. A couple of approximates came out of vowel combinations, because there were basically, with the vowels, you could have vowels in any order. We'll get to that in a second. Let's see. But yeah, the palatal series that came from vowel combinations. Anyway, the proto stage had four vowels, I, U, and A. Those who have watched LangTime Studio for a bit know that I have a particular distaste for central vowels. A, because they're lame. Ugh. Anyway, if you were alive when I was alive, or older, and you listened to the radio, you'll notice that there was a period in time in the 90s where grunge kind of became like, I don't know, folky pop rocky grunge stuff. Anyway, all of those singers just relied so heavily on central vowels because, and I figured this out, this is true, you can try it out. It is easier to control the pitch of your voice or to make it sound like you are not off pitch if you're using central vowels as opposed to front or back. So Eddie Vedder did this, Scott Weiland did this, what's that Creed dude did it? Creed is the one I'm thinking of, right? Anyway. But yeah, so it's like that's why, you know, you hear Eddie Vedder, it's like it's not can't find a better man, it's can't find a better man. It's like all of it is just central vowels. And it's so lazy because it's like, all right, yeah, you don't have to hit that note exactly right. And you can't tell if you're hitting it exactly right because it's all right here. And it's just all the middle of your voice. It's just lame. Anyway, but aside from that, of course, these languages that we're creating, they're not just languages that we're creating for whatever. They're languages that we're creating for a board game. And the whole point is that we're going to use the languages in the board game for the names of all of the characters, the names of spells, the names of the kingdoms and everything like that. And there's just no good way to Romanize a central vowel so that everybody knows this is a central vowel and it's not anything else. Unless you start using diacritics and then you just made sure that nobody knows how it's pronounced. Unbelievable. Putting a diaresis over an E for a schwa. Whose idea was that? Ridiculous. Anyway, so this is the proto form, these four vowels. You could have any of these two vowels in any combination as long as they were not the same vowel. So you couldn't have E followed by E or U followed by U, but you could have U, we, wa, wa, and so on. The modern system looks like this. You have E, A, O, U. That A was an interesting one. And then you also have the diphthongs I and ow. This is kind of a little tour of, or just gives you a snapshot of some of the sound changes and kind of the crazy stuff that happened. So like, for example, with prenasalized consonants, what happened was the prenasalization dropped down to regular nasalization, which required an epenthetic vowel in the front, which ended up being a copy vowel. And then the prenasalization dropped out. For example, in that first word acorn, an epenthetic D was inserted between the nasal and the Z. Then you had the epenthetic vowel in the front, and then the nasalization dropped out. And so what started off as Z became EZ, and you have the, what do you call that? The voicing of the ch to r, and schwa basically just was destroyed. Anywhere schwa was, it came out as something else. And so in this context, thank you, air conditioner, it came out as S, so idzire for acorn. You can kind of see the others where A got stressed, it turned into A, but that was only when it was actually A by itself. So if you go down to love, for example, you'll see that it's not Javi, it's Javi. And that's because it was a part of a diphthong. And so it retained its older form. And so basically, we introduced an entirely new phoneme with A because now it does kind of, well, it doesn't have like minimal pairs, but it has near minimal pairs. It's in the same position and it sounds different. And then at the bottom, I just included that word so you could see how awful a form you could get with the phonology that we created. Yeah, like nobody's pronouncing lasnzia. I guess you could. Anyway, that showed up, gave us geminates. We didn't intend to have geminates, but you can have geminates in like a very weird and specific situation, and this was one of them. So you have lage, paw print, a delightful word. Also, I don't know how, maybe I realized this but then forgot about it, but whiska becomes wika, mouse, and it sounds just like whisker. Adorable. Anyway, so that just gives you an idea of some of the sound changes. The nouns could, they didn't inflect for anything except for number. They had singular and plural, and they had different plurals depending on the kind of class that they fell into. Animate nouns had this kind of SZ thing going on. So you can see if it begins with a vowel. By the way, we switched to the romanization, but don't worry, I'll pronounce these for you. If it starts with a vowel like ada, which is mother, then the plural would be sada, mothers, not mother. Unbelievable. Ugh, an error. I'm not going to fix it. It's supposed to be mothers, not just like a weird thing where the plural also means the singular. But of course, where you can't just throw this S onto the front, there's an epenthetic vowel, and that epenthetic vowel is a, for a very specific reason that I forget. But anyway, so ime is rabbit, asme, rabbits, mika, daughter, asmika, daughters, yensi, son, shensi, sons. That's a fun one. Because the S got added to the front because the ya was originally an IA. And then it became SIA, and by the way, the reason that the A raises is because it was before a nasal, and so you get Yensi, son, and Shensi, sons. I thought that was great. Ta is father, Ata is, Ta is father, Ata is fathers, and I don't remember why, but there's a very good reason for that. Oh, it's because the S drops out, because it's before, the S drops out before a stop. And it preserves the voicing, so it stays voiceless. It doesn't voice to, ada, but the S drops out. It can stay before nasals, and that's why you have asme and asmika. All right, so that explains that one. Inanimate nouns were divided into two classes, whether you could eat it or whether you couldn't. The edible inanimate nouns had this kind of prefix going on. And so Emile clover, Emile clovers. Well, it's like, okay, so, or actually, let me explain this. Most of, like, all of these things, all of them, the plural is what we understand as the mass. So Emile is clover, Etzive is mint, Edulu is grass, Enalu is rain, Edzucha is grass. And the singulars, I couldn't actually fit them because it's too big. But mile is like a clover leaf, sive is a mint leaf, tulu is a blade of grass, alu is a drop of rain, and udzucha is a blade of grass. And udzucha is wheatgrass. That's right, I couldn't fit wheatgrass on there. So tulu is regular grass, and udzucha is wheat grass. So you just forgive me for not writing the whole thing in there, but yeah. Udzucha is a blade of wheatgrass, and edzucha is wheatgrass in general. For inedible inanimate nouns, they had this kind of a to thing going on. So mina, tomina, uni, tuni, although you could eat a cloud. Kata, togada, and you can see there's voicing going on there. The one place where it was a little weird was when it began with a vowel. The to became tu, because it was originally tu, and that became toi, and toi became qua. So there was a sound change where T went to K before W. And so it's not twahehe for bodies, it's quahehe. And then faba, tovaba, backs. Backs, oh my gosh, I did it again. Mother, mothers, and now backs. Unbelievable. 2 missing S's in this PowerPoint that I am absolutely not going to fix. Apologies. Verbs, we ended up doing this kind of thing where there was a plain form and a reduplicated form, and then they agreed, but they are not agreeing with the subject, remember, because this is an ergative absolutive language. They're agreeing with the absolutive argument. So, and then reflexes, they have a whole story, which I'm not going to get into, but trust me, they work. But so like, this is, so Megan is the word for to be blue. And then that second E is an A that raises before a nasal coda. So when it's not the coda, wait a minute, those are wrong. That should be Megensis and Megensas. So apologies there. But it should not be, it should actually be Megangu, I believe. But then the A should be white. Oh, so many errors. You'll just forgive me for this. Anyway, Meganun, Meganis, Megan, Megangu, Megensis, and Megensas, and then Megami. And then the reduplicated form, there's a whole like series of convoluted ways that we get these reduplicative prefixes. Sometimes the vowel changes, sometimes there are more changes. So in this case, it's like, Meganun is I am blue. And then mi me ganun is I was blue, or I'm being blue. It kind of depends. I shouldn't have done this with a stative verb, but I was just showing you the forms. All right, so to show you some sentences, I held the mouse. Julia wikanun. Julia wikanun, that's the best way of saying it. And the parts in white, that's the parts that agree, because of course, hold agrees with mouse, the object of the sentence or the absolute of argument. That little apostrophe n is actually an enclitic preposition. It is an ergative preposition. So un is first person singular, and the little n enclitic tells you that un is the ergative argument, and then Julia agrees with Wika. So I held the mouse. If you wanted to say the mouse held me, Julion en Wika. Julion is now agrees with the first person singular argument, and Wika is the ergative argument. Here are the pronouns. Take a look. They're kind of nice. Oh, the third person singular pronouns have this distinction where there's one pronoun for rabbits, there's another pronoun for animate things that are not rabbits, and then there's another pronoun for things that are inanimate, the carrot one. So that was kind of fun. Okay, for writing system, we created a writing system that writes from top to bottom, which, good Lord, never again. What a disaster. It's just too many problems. Anyway, so what you see on the left is 4 vowels. They're the 4 original vowels, a, schwa, I, u. But, schwa no longer exists in the modern form of the language, so that second vowel ends up having a whole bunch of realizations. The next column has the 2 diphthongs, and then on the right, that's schwa followed by e became a, and schwa followed by u became o. Aside from that, it is like an abugida where the consonant absorbs the vowel before it. And there was a very good reason that we did this, but I forget what it was. Anyway, so here's just to give you a look. This font still needs work. I'm not happy with the way it came out. Look at those H's. They're terrible. That vertical line at the bottom, the horizontal line at the bottom is just a mess. But the idea is there, and I think the idea is sound. Just the execution is a little bit off. But yeah, I'm just going to kind of run through these. You can take a look. That's not AMB anymore. It's actually just AM, but that's how you get it, essentially. There's 2 M's right now, because one of them is an MB and one of them is an M, right? Anyway, same thing with the N. That second one is AND. The third column there is the pre-nasalized D, and how it's surfaced. And of course, the pre-nasalized G now has surfaced as a velar nasal. And so it should be written ANG. It was the AMB one that shouldn't have the B in it. P is funny. That looks like a face. That actually looks exactly like a Kamakawi glyph that I used to have. I think the glyph for statue. At, et, it, ut, as, isus. The second one is the pre-nasalized Z, column 3 there. And this is how you write some of these palatal consonants. So all it is just like, the regular T and prenasalized D or whatever. And then what follows is an old diphthong of, like, for example, this is just E followed by A. So that gives us cha, ja, lia, nya, sha, and ja. So here's what it looks like written out, or just some words written out. And so again, written from top to bottom. Kaitu, everything. It's kind of nice looking. Oh, the vowels. Let me go back. The vowels have 2 forms. They have a form if they're at the beginning of the word, or if they come directly before another vowel, and then a short form. The second one is the short form. And the short form is used at the end of a word. So there we go, like kaitu, everything. Short form at the end of the word. Nimhe, to be hidden. It's a fun one. Hiamosa, which is the word for 8. Which has a whole story. You'll see for the episode where we did the numbers. Jose Yamosa. Anyway, another big mistake. So this was my mistake again. This was my fault. On our Patreon, we have the patrons vote on a particular aspect of the language every single week. And so for this week, they were voting on the base, the number base for the language. And I decided we were going to offer, I think was it base 10, base 12, base 20, base 24. And then for whatever reason, I thought, you know what, it makes sense to do base 30. And so I just threw that in as an option. And wouldn't you know it, base 31, what a disaster. It was just a mess trying to make this number system work and to come up with the writing system for it. But eventually we did it, and there are no longer any mistakes in it. There were lots of mistakes beforehand. But anyway, there's your base 30 number system. Unbelievable. And if you want to see a full sentence, Uon week anime. The rabbit loves the mouse, and there it is written out. That last final line there is just kind of like a period. A very simple thing, just a little stroke. And so, yeah, that is an introduction to the Engála language. That was our very first one. We had a ton of fun with it. And yeah. Anyway, so that's season 1 of LangTime Studio. If you want to see more, you can go through the, 72 hours of it. But that is the end result. Hope you enjoy it.